I mean, that's one of the best activities to do these days, especially with the weather getting all nice. Like you're up in Breckenridge, right?
I am, yeah. So there's some good little walks around where I live. So yeah, we recorded an episode earlier, so I just took a little walk in between.
Nice. Are you from Colorado originally? I know you just moved there from Chicago. Or did, what made you decide to move to Colorado?
I went to school in Boulder,
Okay.
so I have like roots here, but I grew up in Chicago and lived in Chicago in the city. I grew up in the suburbs, but I lived in the city from like 2013 to the very end of 2019, and then just moved out here. So
I always forget that I talk to people under my page. My name's Alex, by the way.
oh, nice to meet you.
It's really cool to talk to you. I've been listening to you guys as a podcast for a while now. I really love your guys' your forecasts, and then you guys just get all the best guests on your show. Like every
Yeah,
time,
thanks a lot.
yeah, every time I listen to you guys. But yeah, I'm down
Thank
here
you.
in Colorado Springs, so I
Oh,
used
nice. I didn't realize that.
well, I just moved here from Arizona like a week ago, so like my temporary studio is on the ground in my brother's house, so I'm super professional like that.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. But yeah, the reason I want to talk to you, I've been gathering a bunch of stories from a bunch of different people, mostly like artists, musicians, a few podcasters, and I'm just trying to collect like stories from all over the country about how the coronavirus is affecting artists everywhere. Just because I think that there's a lot of people who are telling their stories like workers and all that, and they're all important and vital and necessary, but I feel like it's good to have like a community of people who are talking to each other to figure out like what you can do when you're trying to make it as an artist, when you're trying to like
Yeah,
get through this crazy pandemic stuff. So
sure.
yeah, I'd like to start. What did you think about the coronavirus when it first started happening? Like when it was very early announced back in like March.
So I was working at a hotel, and basically, like every day we would get the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today. And if I was working a morning shift, I was a bellman. So I would have to drop newspapers at the doors of some guests if they requested it. So I was used to seeing the headlines about it. And I'm a very skeptical person. So I was very skeptical about it from the start. I thought it was fake news
Yeah.
or fear porn or over exaggeration. So I was immediately very suspicious about it and sort of dismissed it from the very beginning, to be totally honest with you,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I feel like a lot of us were because we're a generation that's been through MERS and SARS and all these other very similar things that have just kind of blown over away, like with the bird flu, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But how has it been affecting you since then? Like the hotel shut down. I heard on your podcast that another job offer just kind of went the way of the dodos.
Yeah, so I was working at a hotel in a ski town, Breckenridge, Colorado, and it all unfolded really, really quickly. Like I said, I was following the headlines and not taking it very seriously. And then I remember there was the news that somebody uh, tested positive for it in Frisco, which is like the town over. And that was like a big deal. And at that time, I actually was sort of alarmed and concerned about it. It's interesting too. I was hanging out. We had a big group of friends that were living here this winter from Argentina, and basically, by the time March rolled around, um, there was all this hearsay at work about what was going to happen. There was, like, I remember there were a lot of rumors flying. And then there was a Friday in early March where we had a meeting about it, and certain people were really freaking out about it. And I was sort of like, if people are concerned and they don't want to come into work, that's fine. But I want to keep coming into work. Like, I'm not that worried about it. And then over the course of that weekend, they announced on that Sunday afterwards, after we had that meeting, that they were closing all of the ski resorts down. And then I came into work that Monday, and it was so eerie. I mean, when they shut down the ski resort and stopped the gondola, and there was just this really eerie sense in the air, and I was having this really strong sense of deja vu for some reason. But I was like, okay, they closed the ski resort. I'll keep coming into work so long as they let me. And then during the course of that day, first it seemed like they were so worried that no one was going to come in. And I was like, I'm going to be the only one that agrees to come in. Then 2 hours pass and they tell us, okay, yeah, like this is at like 10 a.m. in the morning. They're like, so you're not going to be lifting bags or parking cars. You're basically just going to stand at the front and be like a greeter. And I was like, oh God.
Hey.
And then by noon, they were like, yeah, go home and don't come back. We're going to pay you for the rest of the week, but no guarantees after this week. And it was funny, the whole course of the day, my friends from Argentina were like scheming to like escape to Costa Rica. So I was like talking to the front desk agent, like, I'm going to Costa Rica to ride this out, blah, blah, blah. And there were just all these like crazy things happening. But the whole morning, I had this sense of like deja vu, like, of course, like I remember this, or like it felt very familiar. Like I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And then like later in the week, we were basically scrambling to get my one friend home to Argentina, and it was like this crazy trip for him. And now some of the other guys are just still here. So I've been unemployed that entire time and unable to collect unemployment either, which is really frustrating because in Colorado, all you have to earn over the course of a year is $2,500, which I earned in the course of 2020, but you have to earn it in the year 2019. So I wasn't eligible, even though they were giving out, $600 a week if I would have just started work in 2019 as opposed to right at the start of 2020. So
And
yeah, it was kind of crazy.
There's no way to like, since you're in a different state, there's no way to like, you pretty much moved at the wrong time. There's no way to collect unemployment from Illinois.
Well, when I was in Illinois for the year 2019, I was a full-time real estate agent. So like independent contractor, which I don't think made me eligible. And I drove Lyft, and they told me I wasn't eligible as a Lyft driver. And I didn't even try to apply in Illinois until like very recently, because after I got laid off in Breckenridge, I was interviewing to spend the summer working at in Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. So that's a place where you live in a dorm, they feed you 3 meals a day, you live in the national park, and you work at this hotel for the whole summer. Like it's like a seasonal job.
Yeah.
And over the course of a month, they were telling me, yeah, we will hire you. You're our guy for this position, which was like a housekeeping manager. And they said, just give us a week. We have to check a few more boxes. And then like after a month passed, they're like, we're so sorry, but we're not opening the hotel at all. So then I applied for unemployment at Illinois. And I actually, I'm about to start a new job tomorrow in Breckenridge painting houses. So this whole time I probably could have tried harder to get unemployment, but it's like you can't call anybody. If you call the Colorado department, it just goes to like the busy signal. So yeah, I had plenty of savings though, because I made pretty good money at that job in Breckenridge and was planning on going to Europe. So I just kind of wrote it out the whole time without getting benefits or anything.
That's good. It's good to have backup. A lot of
Yeah,
people,
totally.
a lot of people right now are realizing like, man, I probably should have been putting money in my savings all these years.
I
But
usually never save, but
yeah,
it was odd because like I wanted to go to Europe, and I was making cash, and there is like a down season, like when at the end of they call it mud season in the ski resort towns, where it slows down and it's harder to make money. And I had never worked through that. So I was like, I probably should save. So
Yeah. Well, man, so you've just been getting hit left and right, like combo haymaker, haymaker. But it's good to hear that you found something temporarily, at least until things go back to a sense of normality. Like, is it very strange? Like, because I know that there's a lot of like there's a few places that seem like they're very strange when they're vacant. Like you're seeing the cities like New York and Chicago and Las Vegas having empty streets. Is there like a weird disconnect in the energy in like these ski towns, since it's supposed to be like this thriving, like awesome community where everybody's just having fun and going down mountains? Like, is it weird to see Breckenridge like as a ghost town?
yeah, it's really weird. I kind of like it though. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's usually like a bustling vacation town with tourists coming in, and like I don't mind when it's like that. I like that energy. Like I like being around people that are coming here to have a fun time, and that's why I like the industry and working at hotels too. But and Breckenridge is like a historic mining town with a lot of buildings that are very like log cabin sort of 1800s style.
Yeah.
So when it was like still winter in March and there was still a lot of snow, I mean, just like walking around town, and I've been walking around town every day because it's the only freaking thing to do.
Yeah.
But the it's really surreal and peaceful just to like see untouched powder sort of like glistening in the sunlight with the blue sky in this like picturesque um old town that's usually like hustle and bustle with people like buying souvenirs and driving bad and taking up like causing congestion.
Yeah.
um it's just super peaceful, and there's so much nature here as well. So I really like it and I love the solitude. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, see like seeing the mountain, like you can see the ski runs from the town. You can see the lifts and everything. You're just used to seeing them moving and seeing skiers going down. And it's it's been busier and busier every year. And even this year there was just crazy lines to get on the chairlifts and stuff. So the most surreal thing is the fact that there's perfect conditions to ski and there's nobody skiing. But although there are people that hike it and just go down, I haven't personally done that, but I have a lot of friends that have just been like, you know, going rogue and hiking to ski and snowboard. So
I didn't even know that was a thing. That's pretty dope. Not gonna lie.
yeah, I don't have a split board, which is like when you have a snowboard that turns into skis and you have poles and you hike with it. I just have normal setup. So, and I'm kind of like bitter. I'm just like, snowboarding season is over. Let's move on. Let's just like get into summer mode.
Yeah, come on. It's halfway through spring. We gotta start preparing for summer stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I love Breckenridge. It's like my family's actually been going up there to vacation every summer since I was like a little kid. So
Yeah,
I
it's
love
it's
Breckenridge.
amazing. I
It's a,
lived here back in 2011, and I just got tired of this. I was really living the like hardcore city life, like driving Lyft in the middle of rush hour every day.
in
Like, so
Chicago.
I got so over the hustle and bustle.
So yeah, you did a very 180 for sure. Like going
Oh
from
yeah.
Chicago to like the peaceful ass mountains in the Rockies. Like there's I don't know. I've been all over the place. I don't know if there's any place like as spiritual to me as like the Rocky Mountain Range for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Cool. Well, since so you're starting a new job tomorrow, but what about the projects that you're working on outside of like your main or like your day job, I suppose? Like, tell us a little bit about the cosmic keys that you do with Scarlet.
Yeah, so I've had my podcast, the Cosmic Keys podcast. We started it on the winter solstice of 2018. So we had our 1 year anniversary right at the winter solstice of 2019. And that's right, basically when I moved to Colorado. So we used to record it. I mean, I was a Lyft driver. I made my own schedule. I had a very flexible schedule, and Scarlett and I would record in person at her house. And then I was like, hey, I'm moving, but we have to keep this going. So we made it work, and now we just do it through Zoom. But yeah, we talk about spirituality. I do astrology. She's a tarot reader, but we really talk about eclectic things on the show. So that's been very nice to have that as something to focus on. And I also paint and play music and do some like freelance writing. And the painting, the writing, the music are sort of la-di-da in many ways. Like I just do it when I feel like it or when I'm inspired to do it. But this show is like a weekly show where we have an audience that's expecting an episode every Sunday night or Monday morning. So that's been really helpful. And there's definitely been weeks where I'm just like so drained, sleeping like 14 hours. And then finally, when it comes around to do the podcast, I finally feel like I have a purpose finally. But as far as my other projects, like it's so like as we're talking now, I'm about to start a new job tomorrow, and I know that Wyoming job isn't happening. But for a full month, I was sort of just waiting for the green light on that and sitting around, and I was extremely uninspired during this pandemic, unfortunately. Like I've lived, like when I was in Chicago as a Lyft driver, I could take off lots of time to focus on projects or recording or any creative thing. So I was used to like having a lot of free time because of the lifestyle I had as sort of like a making your own schedule and driving Lyft. But even though I had that 100% during this pandemic, I was not very inspired to work on much. I was sort of productive in painting. And like throughout the course of this, I was telling you, I have all these Argentine friends. They're like really into like house music and like electronic music. So occasionally I would be like, all right, I'm going to get to work and like play some of their mixtapes or something and just get into the groove and paint. So I was much better at painting, but I have this music video and track that I began at the end of 2019 when I was in Chicago and had a recording space. I mean, I was living in my art studio, which was in Evanston, Illinois. It was like a little coach house. So it was like I called it the Hobbit hole. I had this space where at any hour of the day I could just be loud and belt out some recordings and like sing and not be self-conscious at all. Then when I moved to Breckenridge, all of that kind of came to a halt. And like the music video editing too, I finally was getting into the groove and would go to a coffee shop because I'm very like, I need to make a trip and sit down with my laptop and travel to like be productive when it comes to like video editing at least. And I was like, I'm finally taking the first step to do this. And this was in the beginning of March, and then boom, no coffee shops are open. So that's been on the back burner for a while. Cause I have all these songs that I've written over the course of the year. And I have like, music videos that I filmed that are sort of, it's sort of like a concept album where the music videos for me are important to the whole package. So recording music and editing music video or filming music video or just like getting better as a producer, I have not found that groove in Breckenridge. I probably would have gotten there, but the pandemic totally sideswiped it all. And the only the only thing that I've been like productive in was meditation, which I do with like a meditation app, which, you know, it's like if you can do one thing per day, sit for 30 minutes and just sit and meditate, that's helpful. And then the podcast too, like I feel like the podcast has been able to grow a lot because there is more free time, we've been more ambitious with it. during the pandemic. But as far as music and building my artist website or editing the music video, all of it has been like extremely difficult. And even just because certain things, like I'm more productive when I have to get up on time to go to work and when I have to schedule out my day. And I know a lot of people are great at making their own schedules and freelancing and stuff, but I'm not at that level yet where I have enough work to really kick my ass into gear and get me going and focus. But
Yeah,
now that I have a job, I'm hoping that will change.
absolutely. I've always found that the times that I'm unemployed are the times that I don't really do anything.
I
Like I've
know
had a
it's
few
sad.
like, okay, sweet. Day one, I'm gonna sleep for 12 hours. That's gonna give me all the energy I need. And then 6 hours after you wake up, you're just like, huh, I beat a whole video game. I guess it's time for another 12-hour nap. It's like
Yeah.
when you have like that job, when you have the day job, I feel like it really pushes you like, okay, my hours are really like near and dear to me. Like I have to make sure that I'm utilizing 100% of like the free time that I do have outside of the work that you usually do. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And nobody warns you that when you diversify your portfolio, like when you're saying like you paint, you do music, you do podcasts, it's like when you diversify your portfolio and you're doing all these things, it's like it feels like you're so productive, but at the same time it's like you're juggling it. It's just like you don't know which ball to catch next because it's like I want to do it all, but I want to do nothing. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I get where you're
And
coming from.
honestly, like I don't have like people are like, you can't just do everything. You have to focus on one thing to be a master of one thing. And I'm kind of like, well, at the end of the day, I'm not that ambitious with being a successful artist. I'm doing it selfishly for my own pleasure. And it feels really good to like set goals and reach goals and attain them. And it is frustrating to be distracted and stuff, but I'm trying a lot of things at once and seeing what sticks, and the podcast seems to be sticking. And I think by the summer, the music and the art stuff will advance because I am going to have a website. And even if I just had like a store or, you know, when I was in Chicago, there would be deadlines if you're going to do a gallery show. So if you have deadlines, that's really helpful too. But yeah, like the juggling things I can totally relate because that's how I've always been, you know.
Yeah. And on top of that, you are a master astrologer. Like your guys's your
That's
episode,
another thing.
like your Astro 101 series, like really taught me. Like I'm just on like the very base beginning of my journey into like the esoteric and all that, but your
Mhm.
tarot 101, your astrology 101, it's really it you guys made a really good beginner guide. So how have you do you do astrology on a daily basis, would you say? Or
Well,
is
yeah,
that
like
even is that even the right
astrology.
term? Do you observe astrology? Do you do astrology? Practice astrology?
Yeah, I totally practice astrology on a daily basis. And there's so many different ways you can apply astrologies. And I mean, I've been studying it for a really long time and would casually read some friends' charts at a bar or something, or occasionally somebody would really show interest and be like, let's sit down and actually give me a real reading. But I've always been comfortable doing what's known as like mundane astrology, which is basically what the forecast is on our show. So I just look at the calendar and see the major aspects that are happening in the week ahead and say to the audience, like, hey, there's a full moon on Friday. Look out for A, B, and C. So I'm I'm very comfortable being a astro weatherman, and that's kind of how I learn what it really means. Because when I look at the calendar, I observe my own life in my own head, and I'm like, how is this aspect coming through? And once I get a hit, it helps me understand the symbolism of the planets better. But as far as doing it every day, yeah, I always pay attention to the where the moon is, what sign in the zodiac the moon is in, what phase of the moon it's in, whether it's waxing or waning. And so I pay attention to it from a weather perspective often. Like you're just kind of looking at what the energy of the planets is, so you know what to expect. But natal astrology is when you study somebody's birth chart, and the birth chart is a snapshot of the planets, a snapshot of the whole zodiac at the moment you're born, and you carry that with you through your whole life, and it's sort of like a roadmap for life and a summary of your personality energetically. That's been more intimidating for me to get good at, because like, you know, I was just a hobbyist before we had the podcast, and then I just became the weatherman, which I'm really comfortable with and have been comfortable with. But to be good at reading charts, you have to read a whole lot of charts to build that skill set. So like I started offering, like, you can order a reading on my website, on the podcast website. And, you know, I would get a few readings here and there. And then during this pandemic, though, there's been more orders. And I've kind of been, over the past month, you know, doing about a reading a week at least, which took a while to get to that point, but I can see myself like getting more comfortable with it now. So I have, astrology is one of those things that can get really expensive. Like there's like celebrities and politicians that have astrologers that they pay big bucks to.
Yeah.
And mine is basically like $1 a minute. So like a 30-minute reading is basically $29 on our website, and a 60-minute is $59, which is low. So because I'm just trying to fill in my schedule with readings, and I want it to be cheap at this point, because I'm still, I mean, if I do say so myself, I know how to read a chart and I know how to give a good reading, but I want the experience. So I have lower prices and I'm trying to kind of push it. So it's interesting as far as like what we're talking about on the show about doing astrology every day or doing art every day or having a schedule. It's starting to get to that point where I am more like an actual part-time astrologer that's getting paid to read charts, which is great. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think the pandemic was very like not inspiring for a lot of what I'm doing, but in many ways it's kind of like astrology is sort of like becoming one of the things that sticks. So I'm going to continue to sort of do it more often.
Absolutely. And would you, if you had the opportunity, like if your natal chart reading picked up, do you think that being a full time like astrologer would be what you'd want to do?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Because like every time I read someone's chart, it's really at this point at least, I'm trying to read more charts because I want to understand it better and be a better astrologer. Because you can't just, I mean, I'm past the point of knowing the definitions of the symbolism, and it is an art, and it is, how can you communicate the truth in it, and how can you synthesize everything in it? Because when you look at a chart, it's a big wheel with a bunch of glyphs in the middle, with lines between the glyphs indicating their like geometric relationship. So most people, when they look at that, it's like, what the hell does this mean? But you know, you can focus on one aspect and be like, this is you, or you could, you know, but that's the wrong way to do it. You have to look at the whole wheel and synthesize everything and be like, and communicate it as best as possible. So the at first I was really intimidated by it, especially like when I'm reading friends charts and I'm like, oh God, you're a Scorpio moon. I would have never, how do I explain that to you when I had this conception of who you are, which is different than that? And then I start to doubt it and stuff. And that was kind of happening at the beginning of this year when people started hearing about my podcast, because I kept it very secret, because we talk about the occult and witchcraft and
Hallucinogen. Yeah.
taboo stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nobody's got to know about this. But then when friends are asking me my chart, friends are asking me to read their chart, and I'm like, I didn't think you were this. And then it's like, fuck, how do I like, but now I'm getting better at like, oh, well, this just means that I had a different understanding of the symbol or a different understanding of the person.
Yeah.
But now, like I said, I've been doing almost a reading a week for a while. And in the beginning of that, I was like, oh, I suck at this. This sucks. But then now I'm kind of like, give me more. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So it's getting easier with time for sure.
Yeah, and it's all about practice. Anything that relates to paganism, magic, or any of that, like I'm trying to like take the best of both worlds from you and Scarlett. Like I'm doing almost daily tarot readings for myself. I'm also like I have an app that shows me the aspects of the planets, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a slow build. At first, you're like, okay, first I need to memorize what all the planetary symbols are, what all the zodiac symbols are, and then you start realizing like, oh, okay, so if it's sextile, that means it's this many degrees. If it's squared, then it means it's at a 90-degree angle. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to like, it's just pattern recognition. Something that I realized is like when you go to like college or school, it's very much you're studying to like the whole cram and dump thing, like
Yeah.
when you're studying for an essay, you're studying all semester on one subject. But if you really want to focus in on like a certain subject that's really important to you, it is a very long process. But
Yeah.
from what I'm gathering, it's totally worth it. It's been great. Like I've been meditating every day as well. Like it can be pretty life changing.
Yeah, totally. And it's you have to like the process for it to be worthwhile. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think. There's certain esoteric things that I've just never been into, like numerology, for example, or I don't know. Like if I there has to be like sort of like a curiosity. Like I really need to know what this really means, because there's always a sense like you're like, I know there's something to this, but I haven't cracked the code yet. So the whole process is kind of like being a detective. And yeah, with reading a tarot card per day, I've definitely done that in the past. And sometimes it's gone awry when I'm like pulling bad cards or pulling all these reverse cards, and then the day doesn't turn out to be that bad. If I'm pulling like a card of the day, for example, and then sometimes you're like, this wasn't a tower card day. And then, but it's like, all it is you're just like waiting for a hit or waiting for the meaning to reveal itself. And then when it reveals itself to you, it's not totally intellectual. It's like experiential. Like you feel it in your emotions and you feel the experience of, say, the tower card. And you're like, oh, this is like an energy. It's not just a definition or whatever. And if you do that for long, like at the very least, if you're reading a tarot card per day, like once you get to the point where you just know the basic meaning of the card and don't have to look it up, like like that's where it really starts to get fun, because you know the baseline meaning and then you just build on that every time you read, and it's like all in your arsenal basically.
Yeah, definitely. So I have a couple of final questions for you before we
Sure.
go on. But we were talking. I heard you guys talking a few episodes ago on the Cosmic Keys that like 2020 is just a very busy astrological year, correct? Like you're looking in the forecast of what's going on in 2020. You're like, this year is going to be fucking nuts.
Yep. And it came true, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, is there anything in the forecast that's I don't know, ominous? Or anything in the forecast that's maybe hopeful?
So it's kind of all about getting through phase one and then beginning phase two. Um, I'm going to try to explain this in ways that like the average person can understand, but there was basically a very significant alignment in January that was building up all throughout 2019, but it went exact in January of 2020. And that's the planet Saturn going conjunct with the outer planet Pluto. And when we look throughout history, both of those planets move very slowly. So it takes years for them to come around. So basically, when you think of the wheel of the zodiac as a 360-degree wheel, around the time of 9/11, Saturn and Pluto were opposite on the wheel. So that's called an opposition. So it's like, one planet was at 12 on the clock and one was at 6. So they're, opposite on the wheel. Then from 9/11 until 2020, Saturn caught up to Pluto because Saturn moves quicker than Pluto because Pluto's way out there. But it's ominous because Pluto represents death and rebirth, and Saturn is like harsh restrictions and structures and limitations, which can be kind of tyrannical in many ways. So anytime those two planets have these aspects like an opposition, a square, or a conjunction, you take note. And because they're so far out, it deals with big generational things that affect the collective. So those planets came together in the beginning of in January in the sign of Capricorn, which is the sign that Saturn rules. Capricorn is like the mountain goat, so it's and as Saturn being the ruler, most astrologers were saying there's going to be some shakeup that is going to lead towards draconian control, closing up of borders, or limiting things with this death and rebirth thing happening too, because that's what Pluto represents. So then during January, those two planets came together, but then there was also there was also Jupiter and Mars going through there. There was eclipses happening there. So there was this like big thing happening in January that kicked off this entire thing. Then eventually Saturn entered Aquarius, which is an air sign related to communications, technology. It's a very futuristic sign, but Saturn being that sort of limiter, the tyrant in many ways, when he moved into Aquarius, that is sort of where we're getting the censorship, the surveillance, the very tech heavy control. So it took the ease off of that pile up in Capricorn, but now it's shifting focus towards technology and like 5G and AI and all this crazy stuff that we're stepping into. And the most interesting thing about what's going to happen in the next year, so basically over the summer, Venus will go retrograde and Mars will go retrograde. Those are two planets that are going to more affect you on a personal level and cause like Venus's relationship. So Venus retrograde is going to cause a rewind in your relationship life. That's could be a time when an ex shows up or when your current relationship is really put to the test. That's going to happen. Then Mars goes retrograde in Aries and it's going to square Saturn. So that's going to, by the fall, by election season, it's going to be really angsty, contentious, war-like energy because Mars is the warrior, Saturn is the controller, the tyrant, or whatever. So this fall is going to be a shit show. Because Mars in Aries is the warrior, it relates to death. I would not be surprised if there's a second wave of stuff happening. So this is all happening, but then at the very end of the year, on the winter solstice, Saturn and Jupiter are going to conjunct at the very beginning of Aquarius. And this is ending a 200-year cycle where every time Saturn and Aquarius, or every time Saturn and Jupiter come together over the past 200 years, it's been in earth signs. And then now we're kicking off a 200-year cycle where it's going to be in air signs. Earth represents physical stuff like buildings, factories, materialism. You think of the Industrial Revolution and moving forward. That's kind of what this Saturn, Jupiter, and Earth signs represents. But now it's going to be in air signs, which is communications, intellect, technology, the internet. So all these things we're stepping into a brave new world at the very end of 2020 after all of this craziness happened. So really 2020 was this crazy alignment that is related to global events like 9/11 or wars or, big civilizational things. But then we're stepping into literally a new 200-year age in Aquarius, which is communications technology, humanity, the collective. It's very humanist and it's very intellectual. So, and then when that happens, we were talking about how Saturn in Aquarius can represent surveillance or censorship or tech control.
Mhm.
It's going to square Uranus throughout 2021 and 2022. And Uranus is the rebel, the liberator. So I think that they're going to roll out these really draconian tech things, and the people are going to rebel and take their power back. That's my hope, but it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so, like, this is phase one, like I'm saying, this death related, like virus related thing. But then phase two is going to be the control system that is ready to go. Like, the technology's there.
Yeah.
But because because Uranus is literally the liberator, the rebel, it's like Prometheus. I think that people are going to rise up against it and smash it, or just like, make it make sense so that we're not living in 1984. So that was
Yeah.
a whole lot, and I was rambling, but I hope that
That's
makes
good. I was
sense.
just like I listened to your voice a lot, so I was just kind of sitting here like, man, this is some good shit.
It's
Yeah.
really entertaining too. It puts a
Yeah.
context to what's going on, and when you see it coming and it comes true, even though it's been terrible, like on
Yeah.
so many levels, I'm kind of like, well, at least the astrologers got it right,
Yeah. Because I mean, like you're talking about, like the information, the technology. Like, have you heard about the contact tracing thing that they're doing in New York, where
Yep.
they're like sending out like pretty much amber alerts to people that are saying like this person wasn't like exposed and like they worked here and this was their schedule. It's like, yeah, you're right. Like I think that I feel like everybody's got this like huge build up, like something big is coming, and it's like it's cool that
Yeah.
the planets agree with us.
Yeah, and the thing is, when like that, they are, and Saturn's in Aquarius right now, but it's going to go retrograde pretty soon, like next week in May. It'll reverse back into Capricorn, into that area where this coronavirus pileup happened. So I think by the fact that, it's going to go back closer to Pluto and Jupiter and everything, that's going to revive whatever the hell. That's going to be like the second wave of this virus and pandemic all over again after stuff opens up. But then Jupiter is going to follow Saturn out of the sign of Capricorn. And then on the winter solstice of 2020, which is a super significant day from the spiritual or astrological point of view, they're going to come together at the 0 degrees Aquarius. And it's literally going to be the age of Aquarius in many ways. Like, not officially, but it is going to be like a brave new world. So then when they do all this contact tracing stuff, and then when people really realize, is this the brave new world I want to live in? That's when Uranus, the rebel, the revolutionary, is going to, I think, overthrow that draconian control. But it's a square. It's not going to be pretty, but we already feel like we're in a movie, so we might as well embrace it.
Yeah, and change hardly is ever very pretty, so I think it's just something we kind of like got to be ready for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my last question for you: are you doing anything special for the full moon in Scorpio? It's a flower moon, right? The full flower moon.
It's funny. There was, well, the full moon occurred early this morning, and I had a lot of, to answer the question, I'm really not doing anything special, or I didn't do anything special when it went full. However, I think, this week it's been really interesting. There's been a lot of conspiracy theories flying around, and a lot of like that movie Plandemic just was like circulating everywhere, and a lot of people are suddenly having that scorpionic impulse to dig deep and explore conspiracies and hidden agendas and stuff. And it's interesting that it all happened basically yesterday into today, and YouTube takes the video down immediately and then it gets reposted. But I am a Scorpio moon natally and Scorpio rising, so I am very, like I am suspicious and very shadowy. I like looking into the shadows. So conspiracy falls into that category. Whether or not I believe in them or, think they're true is another thing. But I did find it interesting that the week of the Scorpio full moon this week, there was a whole lot of digging and exploring the dark side, exploring conspiracy. And this is mostly people that I would never peg as conspiracy theorists who I'm seeing sending me links and stuff and all that. So I did find that really interesting, but I didn't really do anything super magical or occult. I do that more on new moons because new moon is kind of like when you're planting the seed of intention. So
Definitely.
So yeah.
Cool. Well, here, like, have you seen that Facebook group that go out and howl at the moon at 8 o'clock?
I haven't. No, that sounds cool though.
Like, so I think it started here in the springs, but like, it's mainly on weekends. But every night at 8 o'clock, we got onto the back porch of my brother's house. Like, since we got here, and there you can hear like the whole city howling. It's one of the craziest things that I've ever experienced. Like, things that come out of the pandemic.
So that's not like the cheering for the medical workers thing that's howling at the moon proper?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'll invite you to. Oh, you don't do Facebook, huh?
I have a Facebook, but I don't go on it all that often. But yeah, that's really cool. It's interesting too because people are noticing nature now, which
Yeah.
is a big plus, especially if you live in Colorado where there is nature to be seen. So I think it's cool that people are finally, paying more attention to stuff like that.
Yeah, I've never seen as many people go on walks and hikes as I have in the last few months. Like, even in Arizona when it's way too hot to even be outside. But cool, thanks.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me. I really appreciate the time. Yeah, like it's really cool to like talk to people that I've been listening to for so long. Like, it's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate that you talked to me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was really fun.
Cool. And if things do open, maybe I don't know what the future holds, but like if Breckenridge is open, like I have this whole idea. I have another podcast that's all about like subcultures and countercultures. And if it's something you'd be interested in the future, doing like a whole sit down interview to like talk strictly all about like astrology in the
Yeah,
future.
totally.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I love going on other shows, so I'm down.
Radical. And I'll have this one posted on Tuesday, and I'll make sure to keep you keep you in the loop, and I'll let you know as soon as it is up on the internet.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right. Sweet. Well, it was good talking to you. It was very nice meeting you, Dan. Yeah.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, Alex. Have a good one.
You too.
See ya.